The streetlight wavered outside like a fading breath, casting fractured shadows on the cracked concrete sidewalk. In the window of the small apartment on the third floor, a motionless figure observed the sleeping city, as if waiting for something to emerge from the darkness to fill the silence that weighed heavy within it. Inside that space, each piece of furniture seemed suspended between abandonment and permanence, as if it were waiting for the right moment to disappear. The television, turned on without sound, projected random scenes from some program, intermittently lighting up the room where no one else entered. In the center of the room, she remained sitting, her fingers intertwined on her lap, as if she were trying to hold her own heart so that it wouldn't fall to the floor and shatter once and for all. There was something in her eyes that wasn't just sadness. It was an absence built up over time, like layers of paint covering old cracks. It wasn't drama. It was accumulated memory. It was raw emotional exhaustion. Nobody saw her there. No one knew how she got to this point. But if anyone had watched from the beginning, they would have understood that what she carried on her shoulders wasn't weight, it was silence. A silence that began as a teenager, when the first time she said, "I like you," she was met with a dry laugh and an absence that lasted days. Since then, she learned that feeling was a risk that wasn't worth the return. That love was giving up the knife in one's own chest. In every attempt at connection, she didn't look for passion. She sought refuge. But I always encountered walls. Looks that promised but didn't deliver. Words that said, "You're too much." But over time became, "You're too much for me." I never knew if the problem was feeling too much or not feeling enough. And so, it shaped itself. He learned to hide his enthusiasm, to contain his excitement, to smile a little so as not to scare him, as if it were a crime to show interest. Little by little, he became an expert in being almost loved, almost chosen, almost enough. And that wore her down more than any formal breakup, because no one ever said, "It's over." They just disappeared. They escaped between his fingers like smoke. And in the end, she kept trying to understand at what point exactly love became disinterest. Flashbacks crept into the room like cold winds through a crack in the window. She found herself at parties where she smiled sideways, but no one noticed. She found herself exchanging messages that received dry, spaced responses, as if her attention was uncomfortable. I found myself saying "okay" with a polite smile, while inside I was falling apart a little more. The house lights flickered as she walked down the hall, as if the place was breathing. Each step to the bedroom was an echo of what she had already endured in silence. There was a box at the back of the closet, hidden under layers of clothes she no longer wore. Inside it, letters never delivered, photographs not torn up, notes written in moments of hope. Each of them was a piece of who she was before she decided to protect herself from herself. But that night, something changed. Not on the outside, inside. Because there is a limit to how much someone can erase themselves to fit other people's expectations. She realized without drama that she was not made to love in small ways. Who was not born for lukewarm relationships, for loves that apologize for existing. Outside, the world continued its course. Cars passed on the street, windows lit up in other buildings. The city didn't know that someone had just made an invisible but definitive decision, never to ask permission to feel again. Never again beg for reciprocity, as if it were a favor. Because what she offered, her presence, her listening, her depth, was not a burden. It was present. Over the next few days, the changes were subtle. He started saying no without justifying it. He began to move away from those who only approached him out of need, not out of genuine interest. He began to occupy his own silences with art, with music, with reading, with walking. Not to heal from someone, but to remember who she was before they thought she needed to be fixed. At the same time, others noticed. They didn't say it, but they understood it. Her gaze changed. It was the same face, the same calm, but now there was firmness in the way it held the space itself. He stopped looking for signs. He began to observe attitudes. She stopped dreaming about the day someone will understand me and started understanding herself. There were relapses, yes, days when the memory brought back the moments when she almost believed she was loved. But now, she knew how to differentiate longing from illusion, and that, in itself, was power. A kind of silent strength that doesn't boast. It just grows. Life went on. The seasons have changed, and so does she. She didn't turn to stone as she promised herself years ago. It remained sensitive. I continued to feel everything intensely. But now, no shame about it, with the awareness that the problem was never what she gave, but rather what others didn't know how to receive. In the end, no one saved her. No unexpected messages arrived. No reunion rescued her from herself. It was alone that she rebuilt herself, and perhaps that's why, this time, the change was real. Because it wasn't born out of a lack. It was born from a choice. And so, in that same room where silence before had weighed like mourning, there was now another atmosphere. There was still silence, but it was the kind of silence that heals, that cradles, that accompanies. The television was still on without sound, but she no longer looked outside waiting to be noticed. He looked inside, recognizing every part he previously wanted to hide to please. In the last scene, she walks through the city at night, the lit streetlights drawing long shadows on the sidewalk. It passes by couples, by laughter, by people in a hurry. But don't feel less. For the first time, she doesn't feel alone in her own body. Because you understood that true love is not a performance, nor a prize, nor validation. True love is a place. And she finally returned to hers. Because you were never hard to love. He just wasn't loved the right way. Yet.